In this video we are going to take a closer look at the new detachment options available to the Deathwatch through the Space Marine Codex and whether any of these are worth abandoning for our own unique detachment, the Black Spear Task Force. In the first part, we will quickly look at what happens rules-wise when we are picking one of these standard Space Marine detachments as Deathwatch. In the second part, we will then look more closely into the detachments that I personally think are suitable candidates for a competitive Deathwatch list. Lastly, there will be my personal conclusions and a quick summary of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tamer and I will be guiding you through this video.
So what exactly happens when we are picking Deathwatch as an army, but with a detachment other than the Black Spear Task Force? Well, first of all, GW has separated army rules from detachment rules in 10th edition, and the actual army rule of the Deathwatch are the kill teams, which covers dealing with mixed toughness, embarking into transports, and interacting with terrain. In addition to this, we get to keep all our unique datasheets, which of course include the kill teams themselves, Deathwatch veterans, Deathwatch terminators, veteran bikers, the Corvus Blackstar, Captain Artemis and the Watchmaster. What we lose in turn are the detachment rules, which includes mission tactics, stratagems, enhancements, and perhaps a bit surprisingly, unit restrictions. That's right, in case we are going for any of the detachments featured in the Space Marine Codex, we can bring along scouts, tactical or devastator squads and so on. A word of warning here, however, I would not necessarily expect this to survive past a supplement release or a new edition, and while that might seem far out at this point, it would be unfortunate to invest into models that might become unplayable. Perhaps a bit ironic in the light of what GW did with a bunch of the Firstborn units with the new Space Marine Codex release, but my advice here as always would be to magnetize as much as possible. For instance, tactical or devastator marines can be sourced from the same bodies as Deathwatch veterans if one is willing to magnetize the weapon arms, which is what I recommend anyway. With that said, returning to the detachments, while the Black Spear Task Force is of course the one tailored to the Deathwatch, for instance with stratagems working on multiple kill teams, I think one has to at least acknowledge that the recent balanced data slate has not been kind to this detachment, and that the rules neglect on GW's side is not exactly helping the situation either. I have covered these issues in more detail in a previous episode, the links are in the description. For the purposes of this video, we are going to focus on the new detachments instead. What stands out here perhaps in the light of the recent nerf to the Captain's Rights of War ability is that each of these detachments has at least half of the 6 stratagems labeled as battle tactics, the only one to still work with the ability, and the Stormlands Task Force even has 4, and the Firestorm Assault Force a full 5 out of 6. What becomes quite clear here is that these rules have been written with that ability change in mind, while the unique detachment of the Deathwatch is stuck with a single battle tactic stratagem, yet another sign of rules abandonment on GW's side. Anyway, with so many detachments to pick from, which would be good candidates for the Deathwatch? Well, first of all, I think the big question is what Deathwatch can bring over playing any other army with any of these detachments. While kill teams are not in an ideal spot in 10th edition as far as I'm concerned, I think both the Proteus kill team, even if currently overpriced, as well as the Indomitor kill team are viable on the kill team side. What I consider the big winners, however, are both Deathwatch veterans, an overall excellent battle line unit, as well as Deathwatch terminators with their ability to take up to 3 heavy weapons in a minimum sized squad of 5. I think especially once we start thinking outside of the Black Spear Task Force and as such abandon the whole deal with using 2 stratagems on 2 kill team units at the price of 1, running Deathwatch veterans or Deathwatch terminators at 5-man units becomes very interesting. So which detachments would best benefit our unique datasheets? Well, I think we can start answering that question by ruling out the ones that don't. One quick word here before I get started. I personally think that on a casual level, any of these detachments is playable, so if your favorite one is not making my personal list, no reason to feel discouraged from trying it anyway. Having said that, the ones I would personally rule out for Deathwatch for the time being are the 1st Company Task Force, the Stormlands Task Force, as well as the Anvil Siege Force. The issue with the 1st Company Task Force is simply that the stratagems in particular have been tailored to a selected few datasheets, of which neither Deathwatch veterans nor any of the kill teams are a part of. They do work on Deathwatch Terminator squads, however, I don't think that's worth it overall, especially when considering that I don't think that the detachment itself is holding up that well when compared to some of the others. Then for the Stormlands Task Force, I think this one is a bit in an odd spot because much of it is aimed at mounted units, and that's practically veteran bikers for the Deathwatch. I don't think that we can compete against other chapters, like Dark Angels or Space Wolves when it comes to this particular detachment. Then last but not least, while the Anvil Siege Force has some interesting rules, I don't think that standing still is the main selling point for our unique datasheets, or playing the missions well in general. As such, this leaves us with the Gladius Task Force, the Ironstorm Spearhead, the Firestorm Assault Force, as well as the Vanguard Spearhead, still plenty to pick from. For the Gladius Task Force, not much changes here from the original Space Marine Index, that already included this detachment, and in the few months of 10th edition, we have already seen Deathwatch lists doing well with this one at competitive events. Overall, this is just a very flexible detachment with good rules, and I think if one is not sure which one to play, and for some reason does not want to go with the Black Spear Task Force, this would be my detachment of choice. It's the spiritual detachment of the Ultramarines after all. For the Ironstorm Spearhead, this is paying homage to the Iron Hands, and as such has quite vehicle-centered enhancement and stratagems, even though the very strong detachment rule itself, with the rerolls, can be used on any Adeptus Astartes unit, making this quite potent. Regardless of that, Deathwatch had their Dreadnought spam phase in 9th edition, and for anyone with a horde of walkers waiting to be played again, this might be it. In addition to that, I think vehicles like a Land Raider or a Vindicator or 2 are suitable candidates. I think the main contribution here for the Deathwatch is that when we are going for a vehicle-heavy list, we have our Deathwatch veterans as strong battle line units, or we can deploy some of our Terminators from a Land Raider. Moving on to the Firestorm Assault Force, which is basically salamanders, here I think we have some great synergy with our frag cannons, which the detachment rule will turn into assault plus add 1 strength when targeting a unit within 12 inches. I think this detachment synergizes very well with Deathwatch veterans, Deathwatch Terminators, or even a Proteus kill team that can easily lean into a more short-range oriented playstyle. The only downside here, of course, is that until GW fixes our attaching leader issues, both Deathwatch veterans and Proteus kill teams cannot take a captain, and in a detachment that has 5 out of 6 stratagems labeled as battle tactics, that's really no fun. Then last but not least, the Vanguard Spearhead has caught my interest in particular, as I think this has some great synergy with our kill teams, plus while it may not be officially Deathwatch, I think the spiritual detachment of the Raven Guard at least comes close enough to that Spec Ops feeling. Anyway, the detachment rule here is a defensive bonus, aka -1 to hit plus cover when attacked from more than 12 inches away, which I think would go particularly well with something like an Indomitor kill team or also a shooty style Proteus kill team. For enhancements and stratagems, there is some Phobos-oriented stuff that is not particularly tailored to Deathwatch, at least for as long as the Spectre's kill team remains as it is, but there are some gems to be had here anyway. The Blade-driven Deep is an enhancement that grants the unit that the bearer is leading the Infiltrator ability. Now consider giving this to a Proteus kill team or 10 Deathwatch Terminators plus leader. Furthermore, surgical strikes could go well with a melee-oriented Proteus kill team, Deathwatch Terminators or Deathwatch Veterans, and Strike from the Shadows is again an interesting pick for an Indomitor kill team. Last but not least, I also like the Deadly Prize stratagem, which gives a sticky objective plus sabotage, and it can be done by both infantry and mounted units, so for instance a squad of veteran bikers would be a fast and suitable candidate for this. Anyway, perhaps a bit more gimmick than the other ones, but I think there is some good potential to be had here. All in all, while I think that the Black Spear Task Force remains playable, we now also gained access to several good alternative detachments. Admittingly, I think the whole detachments teamed after first founding chapters does take some time to get used to, especially when playing them with Deathwatch, but I think ultimately we have to look at the rules rather than the fluff behind it, and I think we have plenty of good candidates here. Gladius, the very good and potent all-rounder, Ironstorm for anyone who wants to field a lot of vehicles and or walkers, and to be clear here, I think vehicles are in a very good spot at this point, especially when compared to 9th edition. For more close quarter hybrid oriented lists, I think the Firestorm Assault Force is looking juicy, especially for anyone with a lot of frag cannons, and then last but certainly not least, the Vanguard Spearhead goes well with a more shooting oriented playstyle and can add some additional protection to an Indomitor kill team, which is one of our 2 competitive kill teams. Regardless of detachment, I think that both Deathwatch Veterans and Deathwatch Terminators in particular are really strong units that go well with any of the detachments and can very well justify running them with Deathwatch rather than with any of the other Space Marine chapters. Well, I personally do hope that GW is going to give another look at our unique rules, fixing both the leader issues, as well as perhaps rebalancing some of the overly harsh stratagem nerfs. We currently don't know if and when a dedicated Deathwatch supplement is going to get released, and until then, I think these alternative detachments are a great way to keep us going when playing Deathwatch. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the new detachment options available to the Deathwatch through the Space Marine Codex, and whether any of these are worth abandoning our unique detachment, the Black Spear Task Force. When picking any detachment other than our own, we do keep our unique datasheets including kill teams and their corresponding rules. In turn, we lose access to the Black Spear Task Force detachment rules, which include mission tactics, enhancements and stratagems, and funny enough the unit restrictions such as no scouts or devastators. Out of the new detachments, I ruled out the First Company Task Force, the Stormlands Task Force, and the Anvil Siege Force, for what I personally consider a lack of synergy with Deathwatch units, but don't let me discourage you guys from trying them anyway. On the other hand, I think that the all-rounder Gladius Task Force, the vehicle-centric Ironstorm Spearhead, the close-quarter Firestorm Assault Force, as well as the more sneaky Vanguard Spearhead make more suitable candidates. I think the main strengths for any of these detachments are our Deathwatch Veterans as well as Deathwatch Terminators, though depending on list and detachment, Indomitor or Proteus kill teams can be valuable additions. Ultimately, I think these alternative detachments are a great way to keep us going until GW perhaps one day releases our own supplement. After the recent series of nerfs and rules neglect, it would certainly be needed. So that's it for the new detachment options available to the Deathwatch through the Space Marine Codex. Have you guys been running any of these detachments? Or are you sticking to the Black Spear Task Force instead? Any good combos that I missed? Let me know in the comments. Then finally, if you made it this far and I still have your attention, if you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. For that, I have both a Ko-fi as well as a Patreon page, links are in the description. Furthermore, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video, give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.